I never thought I'd be the type of person to snoop through my husband's desk. Yet here I was, rifling through his drawers like some desperate detective in a bad movie. All I needed was a stupid pen to sign the apartment listing papers he'd been pestering me about. My name is Evie, and until 10 minutes ago, I thought I had a pretty good handle on my life. The hidden compartment in Jack's antique desk wasn't even well concealed, just a loose panel that caught my fingernail when I reached deep into the drawer. Inside, I found a stack of letters tied with a red ribbon, like something from a romance novel. The first one I opened made my stomach drop. My dearest Jay, last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about your hands. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Lisa, my sister-in-law, Jack's brother's wife. My hands started shaking so badly, I had to sit down on Jack's office floor. The letter was dated just 2 weeks ago. There were at least a dozen more in the stack. Hey honey, you in here? Jack's voice from downstairs made me jump. I shoved the letters back into the compartment, my heart pounding against my ribs. Yeah, just looking for a pen, I called back, proud of how steady my voice sounded. I grabbed a random pen from the desk and hurried downstairs. Jack was in the kitchen, looking perfectly normal in his work suit, scrolling through his phone. Like he hadn't been sleeping with his brother's wife. Like he wasn't trying to convince me to sell my grandfather's apartment, probably to fund whatever sick future he was planning with Lisa. Found it, I said, holding up the pen. Ready to look at those listing papers? He smiled, that same warm smile that made me fall in love with him 7 years ago. Actually, I was thinking maybe we could discuss it over dinner tonight. Mom called earlier, invited us over. David and Lisa will be there too. Of course they would. Sounds perfect, I replied, matching his smile while my insides twisted. I should get ready then. Want to look nice for Helen. As I headed upstairs, my phone buzzed with a text from Clara. Coffee tomorrow? Need to talk to you about something important. I typed back quickly. Definitely. I have something to tell you too. My reflection in the bathroom mirror looked surprisingly calm as I started doing my makeup for dinner. Inside, though, my mind was racing. I had no idea what I was going to do with this information, but one thing was certain, I wasn't selling my grandfather's apartment. Not now, not ever. And Jack? He had no idea what was coming. Helen's dining room felt suffocating. The familiar scent of her signature pot roast, which usually made my mouth water, now turned my stomach as I watched Jack and Lisa perform their little dance of pretend normalcy across the table. Evie, sweetheart, you've barely touched your food, Helen said, reaching over to pat my hand. Are you feeling all right? Just tired, I managed, forcing a smile. Work's been crazy lately. Speaking of work, David chimed in, bouncing his youngest on his knee. Jack, I drove past your office around 9 last Thursday. Saw your car's still there. You're working too hard, bro. Last Thursday, the night Jack told me he was having drinks with clients. Someone's got to keep the lights on. Jack laughed, but I caught the quick glance he shot at Lisa. She was suddenly very interested in cutting her meat into precise little squares. That's my boy, Helen beamed. Always putting family first. You know, Evie, when Jack told me you two were finally thinking of selling that apartment, I was so relieved. It's about time you had a proper house to start a family in. I gripped my fork tighter, watching Lisa's knife slip slightly on her plate. Actually, I heard myself say, I've been thinking about renovating it instead. Grandpa always talked about updating the kitchen. The silence that followed was deafening. Jack's knuckles went white around his wine glass. But honey, he said, his voice carefully controlled, we talked about this. The market's perfect right now. Did we? I met his eyes. Must have slipped my mind. You know how forgetful I can be lately. Just ask David about last Thursday. Lisa's water glass tipped over, spreading across the pristine tablecloth like a confession. Oh dear. Helen jumped up, ever the perfect hostess. Let me get some napkins. As everyone fussed over the spill, I watched Jack's face. The muscle in his jaw twitched, the same tell he had when he lied about working late, when he said those business trips couldn't be rescheduled, when he insisted Lisa was just being friendly. You know what? Lisa suddenly announced, her voice slightly too high. I should help clean this up. Helen, let me. They disappeared into the kitchen together, leaving David bouncing his oblivious child while Jack stared at me across the table. Everything okay? He asked quietly. I smiled, thinking of the letters hidden in his desk, of Lisa's handwriting declaring her undying love, of their secret plans for my grandfather's legacy. Perfect, I replied. Everything's absolutely perfect. The look of uncertainty that flashed across his face was worth every second of this excruciating dinner. He knew something was off, but he couldn't quite figure out what I knew. And I wasn't done letting him wonder. You need to see this, Clara said, sliding her phone across the coffee shop table. Her usual playful smile was nowhere to be seen. The screen showed a banking app, not Jack's main account that we shared, but a private one I'd never seen before. The balance made my coffee turn sour in my stomach, $247,000. How did you? Remember when you mentioned Jack's new financial advisor? The one handling the apartment sale? Clara worked in banking compliance. Well, I did some digging. This account was opened 6 months ago. There are regular transfers from both Jack and Lisa's personal accounts. My hands started shaking. The exact time he started pushing me to sell Grandpa's apartment. There's more. Clara hesitated. They've been looking at properties. Together. In Boston. The ceiling lights suddenly felt too bright. The cafe chatter too loud. Jack had mentioned a potential job transfer to Boston last month, claimed it was just a possibility. Nothing concrete. David has no idea, does he? I whispered. That his wife and his brother are planning to. I couldn't finish the sentence. My phone buzzed, a text from Jack. Meeting with realtor tomorrow at 2. Don't forget. I can't believe I almost agreed to sell, I said, my voice hardening. That apartment was the last thing Grandpa gave me. He spent his whole life there, raised my mom there, and Jack and Lisa were going to use that money to fund their new life. Clara reached across the table, squeezing my hand. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, the cafe door chimed. Lisa walked in, freezing when she saw me. For a moment, we just stared at each other. Then she plastered on a smile and walked over. Evie. What a coincidence, she said, her voice too bright. Just grabbing coffee before picking up the kids from school. David's been so busy lately, I barely see him. I thought about her husband at home, probably working hard to provide for their family while she planned her escape with my husband. That must be hard, I replied, meeting her eyes. Being married to someone who's never around. Something flickered across her face, guilt, fear, or maybe both. I should go, she said quickly. The kids. Of course, I smiled. Give it Abel, my love. After she practically ran out, Clara whistled low. That was cold. I loved it. I picked up my phone, looking at Jack's text again. I think I know what I'm going to do, but I need your help. I'm in, Clara said immediately. What's the plan? First, I said, we're going to that realtor meeting tomorrow. And then we're going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of family man Jack Reynolds really is. The weight of the letters in my bag felt lighter now. They weren't just evidence of betrayal anymore. They were ammunition. The realtor's office felt like a trap. I sat between Jack and Helen, watching them discuss my grandfather's apartment like it was just another property investment. Helen had insisted on coming, claiming she wanted to support us through this transition. The market's incredibly hot right now, the realtor gushed. With minimal renovations, we could list at twice what your grandfather paid. Jack squeezed my hand. To anyone watching, it would have looked loving. I fought the urge to pull away. Actually, Helen interjected, I was thinking, what if we kept it in the family? Lisa mentioned she and David might be looking for an investment property. My coffee from earlier threatened to make a reappearance. Jack's hand tightened painfully around mine. Mom, I don't think. Oh, wouldn't that be perfect?
Helen beamed.
Lisa's been so stressed lately, talking about needing a fresh start. This could be exactly what they need. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Speaking of Lisa, I said carefully, she seemed upset at the cafe yesterday. Everything okay with her and David? Jack's phone buzzed. He pulled his hand away to check it, but not before I caught Lisa's name on the screen. I should take this, he muttered, stepping out. Helen watched him go, then turned to me with concerned eyes. Evie, dear, I've been meaning to talk to you. You seem different lately. Is everything all right between you and Jack? For a moment, I saw genuine worry in her expression. Then I remembered all the times she'd praised Jack's late nights at work, how she'd encouraged Lisa to help out when Jack needed to bring work home. Everything's exactly as it should be, I replied, standing up. Excuse me, I need some air. In the hallway, I heard Jack's hushed voice around the corner. We need to be more careful. I know, but listen, my mother's talking about you and David buying the apartment. No, don't panic. I pulled out my phone and texted Clara. Change of plans. Need to move faster. Can you get those bank records today? Her reply was instant. Already on it. But there's something else you need to see. Come over ASAP. I walked back into the office, where Helen was still chatting with the realtor about family legacies and new beginnings. I'm sorry, I announced, grabbing my bag. I just remembered an urgent work meeting. We'll have to reschedule. But Evie, Helen started. We were just about to. It's fine, Mom. Jack cut in, returning with forced casualness. We can do this another time. As I left, I heard Helen say, such a shame. Lisa will be disappointed. I smiled to myself. They had no idea how disappointed Lisa was about to be. Clara's apartment was covered in papers, bank statements, property listings, and what looked like travel itineraries spread across her coffee table. They've already put a deposit down, she said, handing me a document. A house in Boston. Closing date is 3 weeks after your apartment's projected sale. I stared at the address, my fingers trembling. How long have you known? Just found out today. But there's more. Clara hesitated. Helen's been helping them. She's been transferring money into their account too. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. Helen, who'd held me while I cried at my grandfather's funeral, who'd welcomed me into her family, had been enabling this all along. My phone buzzed. A group text from Helen. Sunday dinner this weekend. Special announcement from David and Lisa. I can't do this anymore, I said, dropping onto Clara's couch. I can't keep sitting across from them, watching them destroy David's life while they plan their perfect little escape. Then don't. Clara gathered the papers into a folder. You have everything you need right here. End it now. Before I could respond, another text came through from David this time. Hey sis, need your help with something. Can we meet? Just us. My stomach lurched. Oh God.
What? David wants to mate.
What if he knows? What if? Breathe, Clara interrupted. This could work in our favor. Find out what he knows. I met David at our usual coffee spot, an hour later. He looked tired, worried, nothing like his usual confident self. Lisa's been acting strange, he said, stirring his untouched coffee. Distant. I found some papers. She's been looking at jobs in Boston. My throat tightened. Have you talked to her about it? She says it's nothing, just keeping options open. But he looked up, his eyes pained. Jack mentioned that Boston transfer too. You guys aren't really considering moving there, are you? The trust in his eyes nearly broke me. I thought about the folder of evidence in my bag, how easy it would be to end this right now. David, because I don't know what I'd do if you both left, he continued. You're the only ones who make this family feel real anymore. My phone buzzed again, Jack. Where are you? Helen's waiting on our answer about Sunday. I looked at David, then at my phone, then at the folder containing proof of his world's imminent collapse. I'll be at Sunday dinner, I heard myself say. And David? Everything's going to change after that. I promise. He smiled, relieved, having no idea what that promise really meant. I texted Helen back. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Helen's dining room felt different tonight. Maybe it was the weight of the folder in my bag, or maybe it was the way Lisa kept touching her neck nervously while helping with dinner preparations. Even the familiar family photos on the walls seemed to mock me now. Before we eat, David stood, grinning. Lisa and I have an announcement. Jack dropped his fork. Helen's smile flickered. We're having another baby. The room erupted in congratulations, but I watched Jack's face drain of color. Lisa's hands trembled as she accepted Helen's embrace. What wonderful news, Helen gushed. And perfect timing, with all these exciting changes coming up for everyone. Changes? David asked. I reached into my bag. Yes, Helen. Why don't you tell David about those changes? Evie, Jack warned quietly. Or maybe you should tell him, Jack? About the house in Boston? I pulled out the property documents. Or maybe Lisa would like to explain why her name is on the deed? The room went silent. David looked between his wife and brother, confusion turning to understanding. What is she talking about? He asked, his voice small. It's not what you think, Lisa started. Really? I spread out the bank statements. Because I think it's exactly what it looks like. 6 months of secret transfers, hidden accounts, late-night meetings. I pulled out the letters last. And these are my personal favorite. Evelyn, stop this right now, Helen commanded, but her authority was gone. Why? Because it ruins your perfect family image? Because you helped them? Did you think I wouldn't find out about your transfers too? David picked up one of the letters, his hands shaking. Jack, tell me this isn't real. Jack stood up, always the businessman ready to negotiate. David, brother, let me explain. Brother? David's laugh was hollow. You're sleeping with my wife, planning to take my children to Boston, and you call me brother? Lisa started crying. Helen tried to take the papers, but David pulled them away. How long? He demanded. David, please. Lisa reached for him. How long? The children started crying upstairs. Helen rushed to comfort them, leaving us in the wreckage below. 6 months, Jack finally admitted. But we never meant. Get out. David's voice was ice. Both of you get out. As Jack and Lisa fled, Helen returned, her face hard. Are you happy now, Evelyn? Was destroying this family worth your revenge? I looked at David, collapsed in his chair, reading the letters with tears streaming down his face. At Helen, her carefully curated world in shambles. At the family photos, watching us all fall apart. Family? I stood up, gathering the evidence. You destroyed this family the moment you chose to protect their lies instead of the truth. I left them there, in the ruins of their perfect Sunday dinner, wondering if victory was supposed to feel this hollow. 3 days after the dinner, Jack showed up at my grandfather's apartment. I was sorting through old photos when I heard his key in the lock, the key I hadn't asked him to return yet. Don't, I said when he opened his mouth. Whatever excuse you've rehearsed, I don't want to hear it. Lisa left. His voice was rough, defeated. She took the kids and went to her parents. David won't return my calls. Mom's not speaking to anyone. Sounds like karma to me. He moved closer, and I caught the scent of whiskey. I never meant for any of this to happen. The pressure of being perfect, of living up to everyone's expectations. I just wanted something that was mine. So, you took your brother's wife. I turned to face him. Used my grandfather's legacy to fund your escape? I loved you, he said. At the beginning, I really did. Don't you dare. My voice shook. Don't try to make this noble. You're not the victim here. Neither are you. He slammed his hand on the counter. You could have confronted us privately, handled this like adults. Instead, you chose to destroy everything. Like you destroyed David's marriage, his trust, his entire world. I made a mistake. No. I cut him off. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. What you did was a choice. Every secret meeting, every lie, every dollar you stole, those were choices. What about your choices? His eyes narrowed. You chose revenge over mercy. How does that make you any better? Because I chose truth over lies. The family you're mourning? It was already destroyed. I just turned on the lights, so everyone could see the wreckage. He laughed bitterly. And now, was it worth it? Are you happy? Happy. I picked up a photo. My grandfather on his 70th birthday, surrounded by family in this very apartment. I'm not happy, but I'm free. Free from your lies, from Helen's manipulation, from pretending this family was something it wasn't. Evie, please, he stepped closer. We can start over.
It's idyllisch.
There is no we anymore, Jack. I handed him the photo. Tell Helen she can keep pretending if she wants. But I'm done playing happy families. He stared at the photo for a long moment. I really did love you once. I know. That's what makes this tragedy instead of just another sad story. After he left, I opened all the windows, letting the spring air sweep through the apartment. Outside, the city hummed with life, indifferent to our small dramas. I thought about David, about Helen, about the perfect family facade finally cracking apart. Sometimes the truth hurts more than lies. But at least it's real. 6 months later, I was repainting my grandfather's kitchen when someone knocked on the door. David stood there, looking older, but somehow lighter than the last time I'd seen him. The kids keep asking about their Aunt Evie, he said simply. I let him in, watching as he took in the half-finished renovations. The apartment was slowly becoming mine again, erasing the shadows of what could have been Jack and Lisa's future. Helen told me Jack moved to Chicago, David said, running his hand along the new countertop. Lisa's filing for divorce. She's staying with her parents, trying to get clean. I pour us both coffee in my grandfather's old mugs. And you? Some days are harder than others. He accepted the coffee with a sad smile. But I'm done living in other people's lies. ¿Sa un familiar? We sat in comfortable silence, the afternoon sun painting shadows across my grandfather's walls. The same walls that had witnessed decades of family stories, both real and pretended. Clara's getting married next month, I said finally. I'm helping her plan the wedding. That's good. You always were better at building things than breaking them. David. No, he cut me off gently. I meant that as a compliment. What you did. It broke everything. But maybe some things needed breaking. My phone buzzed, a text from Helen. Missing you at Sunday dinner.
The door is always open.
I showed it to David, who laughed softly. She's trying. In her own way. Some doors should stay closed. Maybe. Or maybe they just need new locks. He stood up, looking at the family photo I'd kept on the wall, the last Christmas before everything fell apart. The kids' soccer game is next Saturday. They'd love to see you. After he left, I stood in my half-finished kitchen, thinking about doors and locks and choices. About how revenge doesn't always taste like victory, but truth tastes like freedom. Clara called while I was finishing the painting. You'll never guess who I just saw at the coffee shop, she said. Jack. He asked about you. And I told him you were too busy building your new life to discuss your old one. I looked around my apartment, at the fresh paint covering old memories, at the space that was finally, truly mine. You know what? You're right. That night, I took down the last family photo and put it in a box with Jack's letters and all the evidence I'd gathered. Not to forget, but to remember that sometimes the happiest endings aren't about winning or losing. They're about choosing your own path, even when it leads you away from the story you thought you were supposed to live.